Savannah Chrisley marks first anniversary of ex-Nick Kerdiles' death. Still don't want to believe it. On Monday, September 23, Chrisley, 27, wrote on her Instagram stories, "I can't believe it's been a year. Still don't want to believe it." As she reposted the video she initially shared after Kerdiles' death. She also posted a photo of white roses on the side of a road, likely around the spot where Kerdiles' accident took place, and wrote over it, "Thank you for all the signs you send me," along with a Bible verse. In her post last year following the news of Kerdiles' death, Chrisley wrote, "It is impossible to believe that you are really gone. I am not sure how to even absorb that news. I don't know how to react. I am so sad and so numb. I don't want to believe it." The Chrisley Knows Best alum reflected on their relationship too, as she wrote, "I had just turned 20 when we met. You were only 23. We were just kids learning about life and love, and trying to make it all work." Local outlet WRKN News 2 reported last year that Kerdiles ran through a stop sign in a residential area north of Nashville. While riding his Indian motorcycle around 3:30 a.m., he hit the driver's side of a BMW, and while the driver wasn't injured, Kerdiles was taken to a nearby hospital where he later succumbed to his injuries. "We just want to figure out things on our terms. I mean, Nick's 26 and I'm 23, so we kind of joke. We've got the rest of our lives to figure it out," she said at the time. On the September 24 episode of her Unlocked podcast, Chrisley admitted she'd been dreading the anniversary as she held back tears. "It's so hard. There have been times where I've felt him so present, and it's hard to believe that he's actually gone," she said. "We may have been broken up, but I never stopped loving you. Part of me always thought that maybe we would have found our way back, but who knows," she wrote in the caption. "I so badly wish we were celebrating 30. I wish I could have seen you be one hell of a dad. You always wanted that. This one hurts. What I wouldn't do for that smile and an I love you kid. Right about now." Savannah Chrisley sat by the window, a deep breath escaping her lips as the warm autumn sunlight filtered through the glass. The world outside seemed deceptively peaceful, as if it had not been altered by the loss that had forever changed her. It had been a full year since Nick Kerdiles, her former fiancé, had passed away. Yet the weight of that day still hung heavy in her heart, the pain as raw as it had been when she first heard the devastating news. The anniversary of Nick's death had crept up on her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. No matter how busy she kept herself, no matter how much she tried to move forward, there was no escaping the emotions that this day brought. Savannah stared at the small framed photo on the table next to her. It was a candid shot of her and Nick from a happier time, their smiles wide, their eyes bright with love and plans for the future. A year ago, they had been worlds apart, no longer engaged, but still connected in ways that Savannah had never truly understood until he was gone. "I still don't want to believe it," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. She ran her fingers over the edge of the photo frame, as if the touch could bring him back, even just for a moment. The days following Nick's death had been a blur of grief and confusion. They had broken off their engagement, yes, but they had remained friends. Nick had been a part of her life for so long that his absence felt like an unfillable void. In the days and weeks after his passing, Savannah had tried to make sense of it, to reconcile the person she knew with the tragic way his life had ended. It was a struggle she still faced every day. As she scrolled through her phone, Savannah found herself reading the countless messages of support she had received from friends, family, and even strangers. People who had known Nick or who had followed their relationship, all reaching out to offer words of comfort. Yet, no matter how many messages she read, none of them could quiet the ache in her chest. None of them could erase the unanswered questions, the lingering what-ifs that plagued her thoughts. Savannah posted a tribute to Nick on Instagram earlier that morning. It wasn't easy finding the words, but she knew she had to say something, to acknowledge the milestone in a way that honored him. Her post had been simple, accompanied by a black and white photo of Nick, looking carefree and happy. 1 year. I still don't want to believe it. I miss you, Nick. Always will. The comments flooded in, filled with heart emojis and words of encouragement. But even as she read through them, there was no solace in the digital connection. Closing her eyes, Savannah let her mind drift back to the early days of their relationship. She remembered how Nick had made her laugh with his silly jokes, how he had been a constant source of support when things with her family had been tough. They had talked about the future so many times, what their wedding would look like, where they would live, the life they would build together. Those dreams had faded over time, but the love they shared had never completely disappeared. Maybe it never does, she thought aloud, wiping away the tears that had begun to form. Grief was a strange thing, she had come to realize. It didn't follow a set path, didn't have a predictable end. Some days, she could function as if nothing was wrong, and then there were days like today, when the weight of Nick's absence felt unbearable. As the day wore on, Savannah decided to visit Nick's grave. It was something she hadn't done as often as she had planned. The cemetery always felt so final, a stark reminder of the permanence of his loss. But today, on the anniversary, she felt compelled to be close to him in some way, to say the things she hadn't been able to say while he was still alive. The drive to the cemetery was quiet, the hum of the engine the only sound as she navigated the familiar roads. When she arrived, the sight of Nick's headstone hit her harder than she expected. Kneeling down, she placed a bouquet of flowers at its base, her fingers tracing the engraved letters of his name. "Hey, Nick," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's been a year, and I still can't believe you're gone. I thought by now I'd be able to make sense of it, but I can't. I miss you. I miss the way you used to call me, even after we weren't together. I miss the way you believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Savannah sat in the quiet, the wind rustling the leaves around her, as if nature itself was offering its condolences. She thought about the conversations they never got to have, the closure they never found. "I hope you're at peace now," she said softly, her hand resting on the cool stone. "I hope you know that you're still loved, that you mattered." As she stood to leave, Savannah felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The grief was still there, still raw and painful, but there was also a sense of release. She had come to understand that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about learning to carry the memory of the person you lost in a way that honored them. Nick would always be a part of her story, even if their time together had been cut short. Driving back home, Savannah thought about the future, something she hadn't done in a long time. She didn't know what it held, didn't know if she'd ever fully recover from the loss of Nick. But she knew she had to keep moving forward, if not for herself, then for him. Nick had always been her biggest supporter, always pushed her to be her best. And now, even in his absence, she knew she had to honor that by living the life he had believed she was capable of. Back at her apartment, Savannah sat down and opened her journal. She began to write, not knowing exactly what she wanted to say, but trusting that the words would come. She wrote about her love for Nick, about the memories they had shared, and about the pain of losing him. But she also wrote about hope, the hope that, in time, she would find peace, just as she hoped he had. As she closed the journal, Savannah smiled sadly. The anniversary of Nick's death would always be a difficult day, but she knew now that it didn't have to define her. It was a part of her story, yes, but it was not the end. Nick had been a beautiful chapter in her life, and even though that chapter had ended, her story was far from over.